Doing. Hi, everybody. Good evening.
Hey, how is everyone?
Well, Barry, I was telling you, when it rains, it pours. I'm good. That doesn't sound like the two would go together, right?
No,
I'm glad I'm here.
Favorite point of the week.
Yeah. Let's see here. Bringing up the monitor. That's what I'm doing. Keep getting distracted. There we
go. Oh, gosh. Oh. Need to get all my yawning out the way now.
Yes, please do. It's really unprofessional, Barry.
You get used to that by now. What should this week be any different? Oh, speaking about professional, we sort of spoke about it a couple times before, but I found a couple of reviews of the new the Poster Pro, and I think so. The Poster Pro 2, and I think I'm falling in love with it to the point that I've put it in my online shopping reserve for later box.
Mm-hmm.
Just on the.
Well, you can always do the trick where you put it in your cart and then don't buy it. And they're like, "Hey, you have this in your cart. You want to take 10% off?"
It would need a bit more than 10% for me to.
Okay.
20. Yeah, 75. Yeah. Well, so I mean, it's because I got this one. I got the one I got secondhand off a reputable auction site, and it was a bit cheaper. It was about £100 cheaper, so that was all good and actually a really good product. But I haven't seen what they've done with the new one and actually gone into detail with it. It would suit a lot of the stuff that I'm wanting to do. It interacts a lot more with automation and stuff, and it just looked really pretty. She's obviously very
about that automation game right now. That's critically important. Speaking of automation, we ran out of tasks for this month, so I have to do a lot of things manually tonight. Show notes was one of them.
So, oh right, okay. Oh, that explains a lot, doesn't it? Sorry.
Yeah, kind of. Right. All right. Let's see here. So we're putting together show notes. That's what we're doing. And we are. Yeah.
You see, we had a complaint this week.
We had a complaint.
Somebody couldn't listen to the podcast on Audible, and so I said it's there, and they went back and said, "Oh yeah, it's there now. Thank you. Keep up the great work." So, don't know what happened.
Where did you see that?
So somebody commented on one of my LinkedIn posts off the week before's live. And they said, "Oh, something happened because I couldn't get it to Audible. Couldn't get my podcast. Couldn't get 1202 either." I thought, well, that's weird because they're both produced separately on separate platforms, etc., etc., etc. I very politely suggested it was their side, not ours, and so they've gone back, they've checked, and it was their side, not ours. So all good.
I see. I see.
But they say keep up the great work, and so they obviously think we do great work, which is brilliant.
That is really great.
Because we do great work.
We do great work.
Could be a long night.
Yes, it is. Hey, I don't know, and it's okay. You are absolved from this because you were on holiday. Did you have a chance to listen to my conversation with Joe Keebler?
Not yet, no. I haven't got into that. In fact, you're the next one down on my. I'm currently listening around to a new podcast around conspiracy theories, which was highlighted. I'm just finishing that one off around Bruce Lee's death touch and whether he was killed by his own death touch. I believe the answer is no. And then I've got you're queued up on my for tomorrow morning.
Exciting. Very cool. Yeah. It was good. We've been posting snippets online throughout the week, and I don't know, doing that. So for everyone's awareness, we've been posting on TikTok and Instagram like little snippets of the show, and it forces me to go through and find 7 positive moments throughout our podcast, which some are easier than others. And I have some default ones, right? Like the newsread, that's one of them. Each of the it came from. So I'm at 4. So I need to find 3 additional pieces. With an interview, that's different because now you don't have any it came froms. You don't have any newsread. And so it was very interesting experience going through that and finding 7 of them. It was easy. It was easy to do. But I had forgotten most of them by the time they had popped up in the feed. And I was like, oh, right, we did talk about that. That was cool. And it's just kind of delightful to see those pop up again. It gives me a greater appreciation for the things that we do here.
Good. Yes. You deserve that. That's a good thing to see. Right, let's do...
Open
the wrong window. Do that one.
Okay.
All right, let's do...
So now we have to come up with some human factors things for the story tonight, because
we do human factor stuff all the time. Can we not do something else like interpretive dance?
we could potentially do that. The points in which we need more, by the way, are the last 2, which I was struggling with earlier. It's not that there's not application; it's just that I was struggling a little bit with brain drain at that point. And still am. Let me see here. I gotta update this. And hey, in fact, this caption that we have here is incorrect. There you go. Check that one out.
That's good. Yeah.
Pre-show. This is not the podcast yet. We're not. This is not what we do. This is not it. This is loosey goosey.
Even that's probably very complimentary.
Yeah.
Especially when I've had, to be fair, normally 3 weeks.
You've had about 3 or 4 by this time. Oh, sorry. Okay.
2 bottles. To be honest, on the way through past the kitchen, I was like, could you take one up with me? That might make me fun. But normally I have, we'll find out what the story is. I normally find out the story just before we have family dinner, and so I'll tell everyone what the story's going to be, and I'll we'll spend a bit of time over dinner having a bit of a chat about it and working out what it is. Unfortunately, tonight I've had a meeting that finished very late, and so I've had no time to sort of gather my thoughts or contribute in a meaningful way.
Now's the time.
Yeah, well, I think it might be. Things.
And here I am losing track of what I'm doing. It's almost as if here. Here. Let's do. Let me see how that looks. Does that look okay? That looks all right. Hey, notice the different color.
Oh, wow. Yeah, where'd that come from?
Yeah.
Oh, you just been with it.
What's that?
Have you just been fiddling with your color set?
Yeah, we're fiddling with it. Oh wait, that's Pride. Where's the regular show one? There it is. Yeah, that dark blue matches, I think, the theme a little better than that weird green. It's like the green was just sticking out to me. I guess it kind of worked, but I think this just fits with the theme better. Anyway, we'll change that back to pre-show. Right there. Okay. Yes, let's. I need to at least get one more thing on paper for each of these last points.
Gosh.
I'm going to do this again. We're gonna shoot, dude. We're gonna revisit a lot of our conversation around the robot in people's homes. I feel because there's just so many
Well, this is kind of what this is. It's all fundamental. We've talked about this is all AI. This is all robots. It links in. Someone said this could even be thought of as planned because it's a fundamental underpinning of a lot of the other categories we've talked about. It does fit into loads of the other things. Transport, use of AI, use of planning in cars and that type of thing. So if we go through them bits, so the different elements, tie some of that in, I think there's possibly, if we don't pull them into the conversation, I've just put some notes into the usual categories that we can either just pull out and crack on with.
Yeah, we should do that anyway. Like,
it might
what's that?
Might be good.
Yeah, because if it's at a high level, then yes.
I just use it to help me think a bit better. Learning.
That was Teams.
That was definitely Teams. Let's switch that bad boy. It wasn't even on. How's that happened? It's gone.
Oh shoot! You know what? I should probably get some of this out of the way. I was doing some construction in here. I now have a roof. I have a roof in here. Wait, you can't see that.
I'm going to say, does it? If you hit it too hard, then bad things happen. Surely.
Yeah.
So
how loud is this?
Yeah.
Pretty loud.
Yeah.
We don't want that on the desk.
They are the best tools ever. I was using mine just the other day to help relay our bathroom floor.
Another one too.
They were color coded as well, color synchronized as well.
Oh yeah, they're both the same brand. I mean, you have to. You're locked into the ecosystem.
That's true. Which ecosystem are you locked into?
Milwaukee.
Although
I do have an old Black & Decker behind me. I would like to say good evening to Tony, who's listening up in Northern England. Or watching us, whichever. Watching us because he's through Facebook. Thank you for joining us. Who else is with us? If you're listening or watching with us, just say hi in the chat of the platform that you're using, just so we know that you're there. It's a nice thing. Yeah, we see numbers on our end, but sometimes that number is misleading because it doesn't pull it in from some platforms. So say hi. Hello. Oh, is it on that bit? Oh, I see. Oh, I've just seen the numbers up there now. I think so. I can see my streams. You can see the streams that you're synced to. I can see your streams as well. I can see my streams as well. Oh, that's cool. Okay. So I can only see my streams. I can't see your streams. Interesting. Okay. I wonder if that's only if somebody's listening on your end that you can see that number. Yes. So that would make sense. If Tony's listening, I can see a number here, and therefore you presumably can see that number as well because you have overall control in the masterful way that you do. Yeah, it's very complimentary. Board operator. You do a lot more than operate the board. Show producer, lab director. Yeah. UX researcher. Coffee mate. Father. Husband. I wear a lot of hats. Yeah. Same can be said about you, though. I think we probably are our own worst enemies. So. We've been bored. Why? Because obviously I was on holiday last week, so we went camping, and actually for 4 days because I was working on the Monday, so then we were off Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and it was weather was nice, all that sort of stuff, and so it was just so nice just to be able to do not in the middle of a campsite. We went for some walks, I drank some wine and some beer just for a change.
and didn't do very much at all. It was lush. I read a lot of fiction books. Well,
this is not your one more thing for tonight, is it?
No, it's not. It's
Okay,
there's an element that I might pull in for my one more thing, but it's not the that. No.
Gotcha.
I'm going to do what you do. I'm going to stack some of them up because I sometimes think that.
Yeah, I tend to stack them up, and then I put them in little notes. If you want to send them to me, I can pre-populate, but I just carry them with me from week to week and say, oh yeah, these things. Like these ones I put in there probably 2 months ago at this point.
Yeah, that's good. Yes, because I do remember seeing some of them.
Yeah. I'm like, all right, we're finally coming towards the end here, but then something like this happens where I'm like, wait. Right?
Yes, that's true.
I already covered that in the pre-show, so I'm not going to do that.
But then the people on the main show won't have the benefit of knowing what you've done.
That's okay.
Okay.
Give them some incentive.
So that's So that's what our patrons. They'll know you've done it, and the people watching.
They certainly know.
Oh
man! All right,
it's a Patreon secret.
Patreon secret and live stream viewer or viewer of live stream post hoc. Although the numbers would indicate that not many people do that.
Go back and look. Yeah, okay, that's fair.
They will watch the other version that I put up that's just the episode.
Yeah, yes. Which is probably, unless it comes back up in your stream, then you're not really likely to, are you, I guess? Because you won't see it. So
Right. Well, although live streams in YouTube do something weird where like they're live and then you stop them and then it waits like a little bit of time and then it posts it back in your subscriptions to say, hey, this live stream was a little bit ago. Here it is, in the order.
Yeah.
And it's usually after I post the new one, so it's kind of weird. Anyway,
I'll say because this will be the first time I'm live streaming this through YouTube. Actually.
Oh yeah,
I've got that set up. So that's cool.
Very nice. Very nice.
I'm trying to work out what because I'm pushing this out through 4 platforms now. So I need to work on getting to the other stuff, I think. Their integrations are getting better, I think.
Barry, you're coming through as a little muffled to me, and I'm wondering if that's on my end or if that's on your end.
Oh, I don't understand.
I know what you're thinking.
Yeah, no, I'm on the right mic.
Okay. So you were on the incorrect mic?
No, I'm
I'm on
the right mic. So I haven't changed anything. Is it different now, or am I still muffled?
So I think what it sounds like, when 2 people are talking and at the same time, and one of them is kind of overpowering the other. It sounds like that with the music. So let me actually kill the music here really quick. We'll just have a conversation. It's not as fun without the music, but that's okay.
Well, that's true because the music adds value. But does that sound any different to you, or am I still muffled?
A little bit. No, it sounds better.
I
wonder if there's just something in this frequency band that is like competing, right?
Could be.
Oh. Okay. I think I know what it is. I think I'm hearing myself through your end.
Really?
I think so. Am I coming through your speakers?
You can't because you're on my headphones. I don't.
Hello.
No, you're You shouldn't be because nothing's different at all. So there's no way for that to happen.
That's interesting. Because if I make a loud exclamation, if I go, oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it didn't come through on that side. But I did hear some reverb. That's so interesting.
You will, because you're the lead in this. It's your thing. Your audio will always overpower mine anyway. because that's the way that I think Restream set it up. Because you're the host. But we don't normally have that problem. So what's changed? That's
I don't
weird.
know. It's better now. I wonder if it was just the frequencies in that audio.
Just that random bit of music. Yeah. Possibly.
Yeah, that's it's been going for a while. Anyway, okay, we're back.
Good.
I'll let you know if it starts acting up again.
See, I want to say something, but I don't want to because I feel I'm going to jinx it. So we'll save that for the post show.
Okay. Yeah, you save it for the post show.
Yes.
I'm saving my energy for the show. I looked into my box of energy drinks and I was like, oh yeah, I need one of those. I looked in and I don't have any more. I had taken the last one a couple days ago and I didn't realize that the box was sitting there empty this whole time.
That sucks. So I just don't energy drinks at all.
So I'm not a coffee drinker, a tea drinker, none of that. So
I do my generally every day now start pretty much is a pot of coffee. I try not to have any coffee after lunchtime. So the afternoons is generally soft drinks I do in the afternoon, water I do most of the day until you hit the evening, and then even then I don't drink that much normal tea, but I'm quite a fan of peppermint tea and peppermint and licorice tea. Just one of them weird things.
Yeah, so. I normally don't drink things in the afternoon either, but Thursdays are an exception.
You got to power through a Thursday. Thursdays are
yeah, you have to. Long day. Because you are fortunate enough. My 4:00 hits, you get to go to bed, and then I'm sitting over here until like 9 at night. Post show. Well, it's not all right. I can do post show in probably like an hour. Now I think I've gotten it down to about an hour.
Cool.
An hour before the show goes live. Because after the show goes live, there's also stuff that I do.
Right.
But that's like, a couple minutes, maybe. A couple minutes to like 30 minutes. This is a half hour.
Yeah, there's that bit of... I still find that hugely irritating. That's my only criticism of the of that platform we use.
Well, so it's partly that, but it's partly other things too. And today it's going to be a little bit more since our automation is broken, and so I can't send out everything through socials easily. Not to do that manually. That's okay.
Yeah, I'd like to say I'll stay and help you, but I'm going to bed. So
no, it's fine. It's fine.
Is it a bit? What was it? 4:45. I was up to 5:30. 4:45. I was up this morning. And then tomorrow morning I'm up at. So normally I try and have a bit of a lie-in on a Friday morning, but that's not happening tomorrow morning because I'm getting picked up at 7:25. So it means I'm going to be up early again tomorrow, which means I'm not going to be worth looking at Saturday morning. But that's fine.
It's fine. Everything's fine. Oh, you know what I didn't do? I didn't get pumped up with the thumbnail up here. You notice in the last couple notes I've been doing that. I've been putting the thumbnail in here. That way we like.
Oh yes, that's true.
There you go.
Yeah, I hadn't noticed.
Pump it up.
There we go.
Yeah. Oh shoot, this stuff. I need to add it to my notes to add it to the notes. maybe I'll just do it now. Although I've already posted the notes in so many places that I'm like, oh god, where do I need to change that? But I think I'm just gonna change it in one place. The place with the most impact, I will say that. Oh no, that's it. I guess, well, two places that will have the most impact. The first place will be in the show notes itself. So that way, if I do transfer it somewhere.
Yes.
Right. So let me actually do that in the notes. I will do that right now. I will say, check out our full coverage. This year's healthcare symposium, human factors in healthcare. Oh, there goes the thought. That was it. It was there and it was lost.
It's easy done.
I think what I was going to do was mention something that is a private thing and not a say it on air thing.
Fair enough.
And my brain caught me and was like, oh yeah, don't say that on air.
Brain's way ahead of everything else.
If that wasn't a tease, I don't know what is.
That's what we have private chat for.
That is what we have private. You know what? I will message you what I was about to say, or what I was. Won't message you what I was about to say, but what I was about to comment on.
Right. The anticipation of the private chat.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. I was gonna say something about that, but yeah, that would have been not a great thing to say live. Yeah. Woo. All right. Well, now that I got that in the notes, I did not type that in the notes. That's a good thing.
Yes.
Dude, we are like live in 3 minutes. Well, we're live now. Oh. We're ready to record in 3 minutes. Are you ready to record? Are you?
Born ready.
Oh, okay. Good.
But I'm definitely there to go.
Good. Glad.
The only actually before we do go live, it came from that third one.
Yeah.
What are we wanting to do with that? I would just kind of comment on whether we think it's appropriate, as in, are they about right, or they're also in US money, so I don't know what that truly means.
Oh no, they have UK's as well. Did they not? No, they totally have UK. Yeah, UK.
Sorry, yes, no, let's just.
Do you want to do the translation, or is it? Is it in US or is it in?
It says dollars.
It says dollars, so I'm wondering if they're translating it to US dollars, and so you would need to do a conversion to get it into UK.
Let's do that.
Let's take a look at the results, just maybe to verify this, because I don't want to give out the wrong numbers. If there's like some weird cries UK tears.
That's converted. That's probably about right, because there's no way that's a UK number. No, even that's high. That's ridiculous. Oh, medium summit. Yeah, no, that's yeah, okay, that's about right.
Okay, so is that number UK or is that converted to US?
That's converted to US. So
can you write the UK equivalent right next to it?
I certainly can't. I'm coming back here. Okay.
Okay.
Just don't tell any of my staff that.
So I think everything else is in US dollars.
Everything else is US. Yeah, no, that's fine.
And that's all respondents. Yeah, this is the only breakdown here between these two.
Fine.
Yeah. Okay. You ready to go? We're doing this. I'm like suddenly full of energy.
Good. I need to go and move to the US because you're getting paid way more than I am.
Well, just remember everything costs twice as much here. So.
That's true.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
We have healthcare.
Yes, exactly. All right. We're going to take a quick, you'll see this thing play and we'll go back. We'll be back right back. We'll right up.
Welcome to Human Factors Cast, your weekly podcast for human factors, psychology, and design.
Hi, everyone. It's episode 253. We're recording this live on August 4th. How is it August already? 2022. This is Human Factors Cast. I'm your host, Nick Roome. I'm joined today by Mr. Barry Kirby.
Hey there, good evening.
What an intro. We got a great show for you tonight. We're going to be talking about how to categorize conversational interfaces. Riveting. We also answer some questions from the community about human factors engineering being considered design, how to run concept testing that isn't worthless, and we'll cover some insights from the UXPA salary report. But first, got a couple programming notes for y'all. I don't know if y'all noticed, but we did last week post our interview, my interview with Joe Keebler, who's the chair of the International Symposium on Human Factors and Ergonomics in Healthcare. In addition to that coverage, we also wrapped up in a nice little bow a couple of extra things for you. So we also did a trend alert on evaluating and improving complex medical device systems, as well as 4 themes that are emerging in human factors in healthcare from the symposium this year. We've also posted a roundup on our blog. All this stuff is available to you. It'll be in the show notes of this episode. Thank you, huge thank you to our digital media lab for going out covering the event. Huge thank you to Joe Keebler for sitting down with me, taking the time, and also thank you to HFES for providing access. Barry, you've been busy over at 1202. You want to talk about the latest over there?
Yeah, absolutely. So over in 1202, we've been looking back at the rail sector. So I've had an interview with Nora Balfe, who is the human factors lead in Irish Rail. And so Irish Rail has its own share of human factors challenges. And really, Nora gave us a real insight into the real practicalities of what that applying human factors in a real world scenario really looks like. So she's given us a real insight into not only the breadth of what she gets up to, but really the depth. And she talks a lot about so the real nitpicky things that really makes her day roll and what she really deals with. So really, really interesting and really good. I encourage everybody to go and listen to that. And then we've got some really interesting topics coming up as well to do with actually publishing in the HF domain, which is going to be fantastic, as well as a whole range of other things coming up. So I've been busy. I've been doing some recording, and I've actually got about a month and a half ahead in terms of content, which is rare for me because normally I'm a week by week type of guy. So yeah, come on down and listen to what we've got.
All right. Thank you for that overview, Barry. Let's go ahead and get into the news. That's right. This is the part of the show all about human factors news. Barry, what's our story this week?
So our story this week is all about how we're going to categorize conversational interfaces. The main drive of this article is to develop the conversational interface taxonomy from an interaction perspective. We've been using conversations with technology on an ever-increasing basis, from chatbots to smart speakers. But have you ever stopped to think about how the different methods of how that conversation is constructed and how that defines your relationship with the technology that you're using? As in every new industry, there's a lot of discussion in the conversation ecosystem about the right terms we should be using to talk about that work. That discussion will probably keep evolving for ages about when to use assistant versus agent, and probably with very little progress, it'll go back and forth. However, establishing categories that help us differentiate interfaces is not that problematic. As part of the Introduction to Conversational Interface Design course, The author has documented the taxonomy that they use to categorize and differentiate the different interfaces we find in the conversational world. So this approach is based on the things that have an impact on the user-agent interaction. The author also adds some examples to make sure that we are all on the same page. So Nick, what are your thoughts on how we converse? Are you an agent or am I your assistant?
We're both agents. We're both assistants. How about that? We'll see how the audio does tonight. Apparently, there's some live audio issues. But for me, I think this story is interesting because it takes a different approach. It's looking at it from the user perspective in terms of the way in which we are interacting with these digital agents. And we've done a lot of skirting around digital agents over the last, I don't know, couple episodes. There's been some talk about robots in old folks' homes, and we're going to bring up that story. It's a good tie over. I think this is some good foundational ways to think about it. Barry, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, and I absolutely agree. I think this is one of them stories. We sort of have them occasionally, don't we, where it's almost a back to basics thing. And we, with the evolution of smart speakers, chatbots, all that type of thing, I think we now largely take for granted just the sort of conversations, the interactions that we have with them. And as they naturally progress to be more naturalistic, then we sort of just assume that they understand everything that we're talking about. Whereas actually we do need to get back to basics a bit more. Having been playing around with chatbots and things for a while, you kind of forget that a lot of them are based on actually fairly simplistic decision trees and things like that. And with the implementation of AI and more going to artificial general intelligence and things, this is got to be some fundamental stuff to help us work with. But what I do like is actually the way you described it as well, is that this feels like it's one of the first that's been put in front of the user has been put in the front of the conversation, not about, so that it's actually been a user focused development, which we're all fans of here in the human factors world.
Yeah, we all like it when the human is at the center of things. So I think a good way to go about this might be to talk about the category that this author at least talks about here, and then talk about the human factors application to that category. So maybe we can just trade off here. The first one here is communicative freedom, right? And this is basically the capability for users to use their own words when interacting with an agent. And so, some examples of this might be like natural language processing, like speaking to, speaking to a digital agent when you say, activate the wake word. I don't want to say it to activate anybody's devices, but there are certain Amazon devices and Google devices that are in everybody's homes that if you say certain key terms, they wake up. And then you can ask them things and it will try to process the way that you are asking it through your natural language. There's also sort of the, there's also that approach, but from a text-based approach where you're typing in, I want to do X, right? And you are typing that in, and it is parsing your sentence, and that is natural language processing. The other half of that piece is kind of the bit with choosing a response to a prompt that they give you, right? And this is more like click a button, right? What would you like to do? And the options are A, B, and C, and you press one of those options. It then populates the conversation with that option. It understands it because it is a direct input that is exactly what it was looking for, and therefore it can move forward with that conversation.
Yeah, it is really, I mean, just to jump in on that one, it really shows us we naturally think that we want to go down that natural language processing route, because we sit there, even if you're using some sort of wake word to get its attention effectively, we don't want to necessarily have to train ourselves on how we interact with this technology. And this sort of falls into that human factors paradigm of training, of when you sort of sit there and say, if you have to teach people how to use this type of technology, then you're almost getting away from the effectiveness of the technology. So when we've talked about the different people who might use this, so the elderly, for example, in the current domain, we want this sort of thing to be able to sit there and they just talk with the device, which links back to one of the previous episodes that we've done. We don't want them to have to worry about how they pass their syntax together. and putting their structure in a certain way in order to get a result. So we want to go down that route, but there are elements there where we actually want to have quite a tight control on how that syntax is put together. So if you're delivering commands in, say, a fighter jet or something that has audio controls, you don't necessarily want too much natural language processing. You want to deliver commands and get it to be done in a certain way, because you might say other things that you don't want to have an accidental, like we nearly just did with saying the wake word. You don't want to have that going off at the wrong time, do you?
Yeah, they must be intentional, and I'll add to that too. There's benefits to having those prompts for you listed out, right? And I think the biggest thing for me is sort of this recognition versus recall piece of human factors 101. You sort of have the recognition of these prompts that are coming through the written language or the button prompts, and then you have the natural language processing is where you have to recall the command in a lot of cases, unless you ask the computer for a command to give you, so that way you know what your options are. And so when you're looking at that recall nature of it, you're also looking at the possibility of not knowing everything that you're able to do from a user perspective versus knowing what you're able to do with the options being finite in the click a button perspective. Anything else on this one, Barry?
Yeah, I guess just to highlight the example of where that is really prevalent in everybody's use at the moment. So if you have one of these smart speakers and you put skills onto it, it's quite often you can forget what skills you put onto it because it's not obvious. There's the speaker there, you don't have a prompt. And particularly with some of the more fun skills you can get. So I know for a fact on ours, you've got the ability to do the automatic self-destruct like you have on Star Trek, on Star Trek Craft. And if you put in if you give it the right command and a certain code, it'll then go down the 30 seconds, 20 seconds and do a whole explosion thing, which is really cool. And it'll fire photon torpedoes and all that sort of jazz, which is really great, but I keep forgetting about it. And so unless you know it's there, then you don't use it. And so that's a silly, almost a frivolous example but if you've got key functions that you forget you can do just because it's not, you're not prompted to do so, then that shows, that you do need a bit more alongside that. Should I dive into
you want to take us through the next one here?
So the next one is really looking at that type of interaction that you have. So how the users physically interact with the medium on which that's taking place. So we've already talked around sort of smart speakers, which are largely voice activated, so you can have that pure voice interfaces, text-based interfaces, so chatbots, things like that. So where you're typing in the answers, and then you can get some ones that are sort of multimodal and use mixtures of both and other bits as well. So it's not only smart speakers that use the voice interfaces. It's very popular when you go and ring, say some sort of service supplier or something like that. You will go through. You will have basically a bot at the end of it asking you questions to try and get you to a resolution without actually having to go to a live assistant. Equally, on your text-based chat, you can either have quite an open chat or it will be a structured approach to try and get you to some sort of resolution. And really, with a lot of these, what they're trying to get to is the not to have to use live people to come up with a resolution. So let's see if they can use what is known by the system to get there. So I've not seen, and I can't think of an example where you use both voice and text at the same time.
I have. I can walk you through that.
Brilliant. Yeah. Let's please do that because I can't think of one.
So there are actually, in fact, some of these in-home smart devices that use those wake words that have screens attached to them as well. And a lot of times, if you ask it something, it will then respond with, what would you like to do? Right. And it will give you those options available as potential prompts. You could still ask it something else, but it could show those prompts on the screen. You could interact with it on that area. And so basically what we're talking about here is redundancy of information, redundancy of communication when it comes to the user perspective, right? Because you are then getting it in multiple modes. You're either looking at the response and hearing it at the same time, and there's less ambiguity about what the computer said in that moment, that agent, that chatbot, whatever you want to call it. There's less ambiguity because you're able to read what their response is in addition to hearing the response. When you have those paired together, there's much higher accuracy. And so, I don't know if you have sort of readouts on HUDs in fighter jets, but that might be another application of that. If the computer is reciting something and there's sort of that information available, then that would be another example of that multimodal. And really what we're talking about here is just the ability to interact that way. And so what that looks like is literally just a button on a screen that if they are presenting those response options, that's what it looks like. For me, I think this is one of the like basic levels. Like how are you interacting with it? Because there could be potential other ways that are not listed here that you could interact with something. Take, for example, someone who speaks ASL. Are there gestural based approaches to this type of interaction? Maybe not a lot of them today, but someday it could be a reality. And those, there's going to be sort of this whole human factors communication issue of what the ambiguity around some of those signs and the intent behind those signs, because I know a lot of them can mean different things based on context, where they're located in relation to your body, to your face, all those things. And so will a system be eventually we'll get to the point where systems are complex enough to understand those, but that is another type of interface where you have these gesture based responses. And I'd imagine there's at least that's reading the user's input. I don't know how they would communicate back. They might just, provide some text on a screen.
Yeah.
There might also be a robot doing that, but then like, what does that mean? Right.
I was
And so
wondering,
there's
that could be
go ahead.
fascinating, couldn't it? You could have that the robot doing it, or just an animated body, set of hands. It'd be, in theory, I don't think it should be that difficult to do, but it's how lifelike you could make it so it looks natural to have that conversation. I think that could be fascinating to see, because if they
Like
got that
an
right,
NPC.
well, but if they got it, so where you normally have somebody doing translation of speeches live and things like that, in SL, then why that could be almost an automated service. In fact, thankfully nobody will be listening right now. We could just quickly go away, patent that, right away, get the design done, and nobody worry about it.
U.S. Patent Office.
There you go. I think you're right, because there's I mean, I wonder how then you deal a lot with, because we a lot of the conversations you have now are very much of the very this sort of transactional. We'll get onto that in a bit. But then how do you deal with different people's colloquialisms and things like that? Because they add it's almost some people from different areas have such local words that how do you deal with the errors alongside that? I don't know.
Localization, dialect.
Yeah, that type of thing. Because it's going to need such a large knowledge bank to make that happen. But I guess that again, that's just evolution of technology, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm going to jump into this next one, unless you have any other points for sort of the type of interaction.
Don't go for it.
So let's get into this next category here, which is domain of knowledge. And really, this is kind of getting at what the assistant can or cannot do in relation to everything. So to break this down further, you kind of have a specialty that this agent could do, and then you also have those ones that are more general. And the difference could be sort of illustrated by if you use a dedicated customer service app for any service, it's going to know finite information about that service. It's going to give you information that is relevant to that service. It's not going to have what's the weather like in my part of the world today. That is more of a generalist type of perspective, right? This is scope can be unlimited, although sometimes the information returned is maybe less of a lesser fidelity, let's say, than someone like some agent, like a specialist might be, right? So you have sort of a specialist who knows every single thing about that topic, being customer service for whatever you want to say, right? Customer service for Human Factors Cast. Our customer service bot knows every single thing you need to know about the podcast, where to find all our blog posts, where to find all our episodes, what episodes we've done. But if you were to ask another general one that you might have in your home right now, they might, pull something incorrectly if you were to ask them about AI or chatbots or something like that, right? And so that's kind of the difference. Barry, you want to jump into any of the human factors implications here?
Yeah, so there's some interesting bits around understanding the scope of what this conversation is about. So, as you say, with the specialist piece, that gives you defined boundaries. You know you're going to talk about that. There's nothing that can be taken in the abstract sense, or in theory, there's nothing that can be taken in the abstract sense. It should all be focused around that subject, which would work for, as you quite rightly say, a whole host of applications. That we're even talking about things like artificial mentors, or AI mentors, and that type of thing. It's all going to be focused around that area, so that would work. But it won't work in every scenario. So we've talked on previous episodes about using artificial intelligence to provide companionship to both elderly people, and we've had our AI girlfriends now. To provide that general level of chat and discussion, and the AIs involved in them will take a broad variety of input and be able to recognize the context and have them sort of conversations. But then I guess from a safety perspective, we've got to be able to define the scope of what the consequences are. So you don't, ideally, do you want a generalist discussion agent or assistant to be able to do safety critical applications or safety critical actions based on a general conversation, or would you want it nice and tightly scoped around a specialist approach? I suggest the latter rather than the former. You want it nice and tightly scoped. But if you're sat there and you just want a bit of a general conversation, what's the weather like? How am I doing this? When's the bus coming, etc., etc. That's more generalist, because the consequences are not so dramatic if it picks up on the wrong keywords.
Yeah, or other casual conversations like, "Are you sentient? Do you have feelings?" So hinting at another story that we did. So yes, you're right. There's sort of applications for both. It really is an it depends situation when you need to use a specialist versus a generalist. And I think in a lot of cases, we will know which one we're talking to based on the context in which we are operating. However, I think there are some certain circumstances where you might not be aware that you're talking to a specialist versus a generalist. And so there's going to be some sort of, I guess, indication that's needed to the end user that indicates what you are talking to, right? If you ask a specialist what the weather is like today, it'll say, "Sorry, I don't understand that input," in so many words. But then that would be the context for you to say, okay, well, maybe it's not a generalist. Maybe it knows more specific knowledge. And I think a lot of times you do have that context. It's explained to you right up front. "Hi, my name is Clippy. I'm here to help you with Microsoft Word." And so, you don't have, Clippy's not going to know the weather. He's going to know what formatting things to help you with. And so it's just a consideration. I think for the most part, we're good on that. I think design kind of knows what they're doing with communicating to the user in terms of which one we're talking to. Just a consideration. Do you want to get into this next one, unless you have any other thoughts on Clippy?
No, well, though I do miss Clippy. Clippy was amazing. He said with a certain degree of sarcasm. So I guess to get down and dirty to the engineering to this to a certain extent is, where is this assistant hosted? So the ownership of the platform. And the best way to describe this is when we are using the smart speaker that we won't mention because we don't want to start it off. But when we're using that device, most of the data that you provide it on a day-to-day basis is hosted by that company. It's hosted within its servers, etc., etc. Until you start using skills. then there's certain skills obviously there that are hosted by third parties, or sort of developed by third parties, and the data is owned then within that third party. So from an interface perspective, you perhaps think, well, so what? Who cares? That why should I be bothered? But when you start then looking at your privacy concerns, I mean, everybody's concerned about how their data is being used, potentially abused, but actually also how's that data being mined for in-depth knowledge about yourself and about how the type of people that you live with, and then how that can be used for people to make money out of. We do get concerned about that, and then you get into the whole privacy concerns that you're sharing potentially quite personally sensitive data around spending, around the conversations that are going on in the background, and the sort of questions you're asking it, and then fundamentally again cybersecurity. When you're picking up the issues around, could your devices be hacked? Could your information be leaked? Depending on where these smart devices are as well. So, whilst it seems a very boring thing compared to some of the other things we talk about, there is some specific human factors engineering there that we need to make users aware of. Where is that data being hosted? How is it being hosted? And make sure they're buying into the potential risks, because I think that's possibly a strong weakness that we have now in the current development of evolution. When you're using skills, when you can't see the differences, it's not as obvious. When it's written down, generally you can see one web page will take you to another web page, and so then it will bring up another bot, or there is more of an onus to say, when you input this data, that this data is going to be shared with. So obviously in the EU we have GDPR rules, and there is an onus there to tell you that this information is being shared with third parties and where this data is being stored, etc., etc. But with the audio versions of this, well, it's not easy just to put the small print on there, is it? It's a single channel of communication. You can't just lose it.
Right. And with that, well, with the audio version, like, how do you communicate to people who, I mean, you could do all that stuff at setup, right? You could do the GDPR sort of when, this system will provide access to X, Y, and Z. Do you agree? Yes. Right. And so you could do that at the beginning, but if there's somebody else in your home that is giving them commands that wasn't around at setup, like, I don't know, your wife, your child, your husband, your friend that comes over, like, there's a lot of different scenarios in which they may not be aware of what's being collected on them. And it's like, for this to work responsibly, you can't necessarily do that, or you'd have to do that for each one. And that's not practical, that no one would use them if you had to do that every time. Yes, I agree. And so to get around that, some of these companies have implemented standards and best practices and reviews by which they go through in order to get them on their platforms. We're talking about the Amazon one in this case, and Google as well. They have standards that allow them before but you also don't have some of that if you do like a homebrew one. If you made your own skill and launched it on your own one at home, there's no review for that because you're testing it in your own home. And so it's up to you, the person, to communicate that information to whoever else might be using it. And that is where it gets a little tricky, right? You build a skill to collect information on the people that you live with, or you build a skill that, I don't know, I built a skill that would search through our episodes at one point. But I mean, like, there's no real privacy concerns with that. so I mean, there is sort of the understanding that you need to have that information communicated. And I don't know where else we go from here other than it's a huge cybersecurity issue. Data is really important. And let's keep having that conversation and build into law ways to protect us from that type of abuse.
Yep.
I'm going to get into this next one here. This is kind of the conversation initiative, which is really looking at who is playing the different roles when we're taking turns in a conversation. And so if you think about this, it could be sort of the reactive versus proactive type of assistant. You have somebody who's reacting to something that you have said. This is an assistant where you say, wake word, I would like to have a sandwich delivered to my house. And so then it will say, okay, from where? What would you like on it, right? And it is reactive to your command. Then you have a proactive thing where it's kind of giving you options ahead of time based on, I don't know, context, but you are not initiating that conversation. This is very much like when you visit a website and say, hi, my name is whatever. I'm a bot here to help you out. Is there anything that we can help you out with? That is one of those sort of proactive situations. And so there's very different instances in which you might want to use both of those. A proactive one would be a very good thing to have when you don't know that something is present. If you can't see that there is sort of a device that is collecting your information, you might want to say, hey, did you know that you could do this? And so that might be one instance, right? The reactive is also one of those interesting ones where if you just spout something out and you didn't know something was listening and it reacts to that, then that's a very different sort of situation. I know, Barry, what are your thoughts on this conversation initiative category?
No, there's a this almost for me gets to the heart of where these conversations go, where this conversation technology is driving, because at the moment we are very set on wake words and then delivering commands. But actually, and we have spoken about this before, there's going to be environments where we want a bit of proactiveness. We want a bit of nudging. We want a bit of understanding about where we go. So in the healthcare domain, particularly with, say, with elderly people, where we've talked about loneliness, at certain times of the day, we want the speaker, the system to just pipe up and say, well, how are you? What you're doing? How are you feeling today? Have you taken your meds? Them sort of things about helping you provide prompts and understanding what's going on. And if we get it to the point where it's a good or much better in a contextual nature, so using, we now get the doorbells with the cameras in, and so actually given a really good warning of there's somebody about to come to your door. It looks like grocery delivery. You may want to start getting up now, because if you're infirm, you might want to start getting up now, or start putting a warning out there that you are coming to the door. You just need to take a bit of time, and so starting putting some of these technologies together and making them really work. It's going to be quite interesting to see how this goes out, because it's this idea about is it an assistant or is it an agent? Is it something that is there to be told what to do, or is it something to be collaborative? Which really gets to the heart of what the initial article was trying to get to. So I guess this idea kind of really gets to the heart of that. Is there anything else you've got to say around this, or should we jump into the next one?
If this is the heart, then no, I don't have anything. No, I do have just a couple points that I think can be tied into some of the other stuff that we're going to be talking about here, and maybe we skip over a lot of the detail of the next couple just for time. But the one point I'll make here in terms of conversation initiative, you did mention that sort of in some certain stances, I do want to mention that this is healthcare application. This is the loneliness. This is suggesting people getting care when perhaps they need it. I'm not going to rehash that whole argument. Go listen to that episode if you'd like. But that is one application. We can think about that application as it relates to goals as well, which is kind of the next category. And this is kind of the focus of the conversation here. When you think about goals, you're really looking at sort of transactional experiences or relational experiences. And these can be kind of like an example might be the goal is to get something done, right? Let's get you concert tickets. Let's get you a sandwich delivered to your house. Let's get you X, Y, and Z. Versus a relational thing is very much that agent side of things, where you're looking at those AI girlfriends. They actually bring this up in the article right here. Replica is the software that was that story on, and so that is kind of that relational interface, or that relational goal that they have there as well. And so really with that, the conversation is the goal. And so that's kind of getting at really the last point as well. But do you want to, any points on the goal before we get into this last point?
No, I think you've nicely wrapped that up really well. I think this last point around is very similar. It's around the depth of the conversation that you're expecting to have. Are you expecting to have something deep and meaningful, or is it just a simple I'm adding a bit of direction? So they classify it as a single turn. So it is basically you say, switch the lights on. Okay, lights go on. Brilliant, job done. Or are you having to take multiple steps to derive enough information in order for something to happen? So to use the example you mentioned earlier, I want to order this shopping. What do you want to on your shopping list? I want this on the shopping list. When do you want it delivered? I want it delivered then. Okay, great, it's ordered. Thank you very much. So you're going through that multi-step approach. So I think a lot of these things now will probably be an element of multi-turn, particularly if you're going to that conversational approach. But I think, yeah, it's still an interesting thing to work out and for the engineering of it, really.
Yeah, I will say with that multi-turn, there are going to be some human factors issues around remembering what you've communicated to the system and sort of what the system knows about you in order to complete that task, goal, whatever it is that you're looking at. And so that's just something that we might have to communicate. Reminder, you've already told me X, Y, and Z, right? So like that's another consideration. There's a bunch more in our notes, Barry, but once again, we've kind of done the thing where we thought, we won't have much to talk about, and here we are at almost time. So let's. Any other closing thoughts on this before we get out of here?
So I guess the thing that I was going on this, I'm very boring, but what about things like failure cases? How is that going to be communicated when it's gone out of scope for what the conversation is that you're expecting to have? More likely in a generalist sense, because the system thinks it's in one part of a decision tree. You're talking about something completely different, like being married, perhaps. How's that going to deal with? But I think that we do cover that on some other episodes. So go and listen to some of them and hear about some of the thoughts on there. Nick, what about yourself? Have you got any final things to play with?
I do. There's one more point that I want to bring up that is kind of a key concern when you think about these text-based chatbots. And really that's how do you make sure that someone knows that they're talking to a chatbot and not a human? As these systems get more advanced, there's going to be more natural language used in them, and they're going to be able to understand natural language a lot more efficiently than they do now. And so there's going to be a need to communicate to the person interacting with it that you are not indeed talking to customer service, you're talking to a chatbot. And so that's just one last point that I'll bring up. There's a bunch other in here that we can talk about in the post show, but we'll get to that when we get to that. Huge thank you, as always, to our patrons for selecting our topic. And a huge thank you over to our friends over at UX Collective for our news story this week. If you want to follow along, we do post the links to the original articles on our weekly roundups and our blog. You can also join us on Discord for more discussion about these stories and much more. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back to see what's going on in the human factors community right after this.
Human Factors Cast brings you the best in human factors news, interviews, conference coverage, and overall fun conversations into each and every episode we produce. But we can't do it without you. The Human Factors Cast network is 100% listener supported. All the funds that go into running the show come from our listeners. Our patrons are our priority, and we want to ensure we're giving back to you for supporting us. Pledges start at just $1 per month and include rewards like access to our weekly Q&As with the hosts, personalized professional reviews, and Human Factors Minute, a Patreon-only weekly podcast where the hosts break down unique, obscure, and interesting human factors topics in just 1 minute. Patreon rewards are always evolving, so stop by patreon.com/humanfactorscast to see what support level may be right for you. Thank you, and remember, it depends.
Yes, huge thank you as always to our patrons. We especially want to thank our honorary Human Factors Cast staff patron, Michelle Tripp. We have a couple extra notes here. Did you know that we have a merch store? This is written by our treasurer. Did you know that we have a merch store? Some neat designs over there that include It Depends shirts, the show logo on hoodies, like I'm not wearing tonight. It's hot. It's summer. Why would you write that? Other cool designs. There we go. That's summary. Based in human factors culture, like I'm going to human factors the beep out of this. If you want to support the show, look good doing it. We do have a merch store, and you can always do things over there. Our Pride logo's on there too, which is actually really cool. And forever, all proceeds of that will go towards the Trevor Project. So let's get into this last part of the show that we like to call.
It came from.
I still hate that intro. I really need to fix that intro. Anyway, let's switch gears, get to It Came From. This is the part of the show where we search all over the internet to bring you topics that the community is talking about. Anything is fair game. If you find any of these answers useful, give us a like wherever you're watching or listening to help other people find this stuff. We got 3 tonight. First one up here is by Emma Anderisa. Emma Anderica. I'm so sorry. I butchered that. They say, is human factors engineering design? I currently work in UX and love the design aspect, but I'm interested in getting away from purely digital experiences. Is human factors engineering about just evaluation and research, or do human factors engineers design as well? P.S. I'm still early on in my UX career. Forgive me for any lack of understanding. Barry, in your opinion, is human factors engineering design, or do you do design in human factors engineering?
Oh, we do it all. So yes, you get in the human factors engineering side is very much the physical component as much as the digital component. It isn't all just UI and fancy groupings of nice bits of text. It's about the hard element. Where is it? Can you reach it? Is it too heavy? Is it too light? Is it big enough does it have the right hand grips? Is it a 2-person lift? Is it situated at the right anthropometric place for the anthropometrics of the user? That's easy for everyone else to say. Yeah, you get involved in literally everything that you possibly want to. And then you've also got it's not just the physical aspects. If project management is your thing, that gets involved into it as well, because it's how you schedule, how you engage with project teams. It's how you encourage software engineers, hardware engineers, and every other type of engineer that users are a thing, and they should be considered in all aspects of what they're doing. So human factors engineering is the coolest place to be. None of this UX nonsense. No, engineering is.
Yeah.
So did I sell it well enough? Was that good?
You sold it. You sold it, Barry. I think so. So yes, it is. However, I can see where there's sort of a disconnect. In some places, they will separate the research from the design, and that's okay. That's how those companies operate. I will say, in those instances, that you're still at least providing recommendations that are based in the research that would ultimately lead to decisions in design. So even if you're not sitting there and pushing pixels, you are still providing recommendations that ultimately will make it into the design. That is, I think, where this separation is coming. But yes, there's a whole subfield. Ergonomics is like in my mind, ergonomics and human factors live at the same level. It's all the same thing. You're just doing it in different domains. Ergonomics is all about that in terms of the physical aspect of it. I mean, you're right. You could do user research, but then you also need to provide those recommendations for the physical aspect of things as well. So you need to be able to say, like Barry said, he just listed off a bunch of them: hand grips, 1-person lift, 2-person lift. I'm not going to go through that list again, but you see where even these recommendations are going to provide some baseline for how a thing is going to be used. And I like to think about human factors engineers as jack of all, master of none. But what's the full saying? I forget. Anyway, it's definitely, you are using a multitude of skills to get to some outcome that ultimately is in the user's best interest. That is sort of the baseline. And if that means that you can communicate your thoughts, your recommendations through a design, then go for it. I think it's all part of the same thing. I don't know. So did I sell it?
I think you did. But it does raise a really good point that we should maybe pick up on post show or something like that. That a lot of people think now at human fact, because the evolution of digital interfaces, etc., that HF and UX is all just about websites and apps and things and phone apps and things like that. And it's not. It's about everything, not just that. And we should maybe get into that.
Yeah, I will just say the full quote: "A jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes a better than a master of one." Okay, that's it. Let's get into this next one here. This one is by Choice Ad 968 on UX Research subreddit. They say how to run concept testing that isn't worthless. Hey, all, for a while now, I've been running frequent concept tests for my company. Our goal is usually to evaluate the desirability of a concept. A session tends to look like this: brief interview, gather information about the problem space, followed by me showing sketches of storyboards, narrating concept, sometimes even prototypes. Then after we're done, they're acquainted with the concept. I ask them things like, what are your first impressions? What do you think of this? Rinse and repeat with a couple concepts until the next session. However, I'm painfully aware that opinions are not strong evidence. Um, a participant saying, I love this, isn't necessarily indicative of what they would actually like to use, buy, or recommend. Plus, we know that participants usually struggle to be completely honest if they believe their answers might hurt the rapport with the researcher. So any advices or resources you could point me to? How do you run concept tests?
Well, it's like for me. So for the type of engagement they're describing, actually, yes. If you read the literature, that type of approach will be panned and is regularly. But the only reason it's panned, actually, if you for the type of goal that they've outlined, what they're doing is actually what I would probably do. You're asking general questions, so all you're going to get is some general answers. If you're just wanting that warm, fuzzy feel, or and I sort of call it the aura of the project of the product, you ask some general questions and you get some stuff back. What you're missing is the fact that you don't know what it is you're asking and what it is you're trying to pin down. So if you've got the main reason to conduct engagement testing and things like that is you either want confirmation that what you're doing is the right way. So you should have an idea about the type of elements that you're concerned about, hone in on them, make sure we get some answers out to them. I ask more pointy questions, but spend some time making sure that the questions are the right ones. On the other end of the scale is, rather than just asking generic questions, get some measures involved. How are you measuring it? How are you measuring success? You might want to go down some some mental workload testing or something, depending on the type of thing that you're trying to do. But again, if you're using, say, mental workload testing, then that means you've got an issue, you've got a concern or an issue, or you want to confirm that the amount of mental workload isn't becoming too much for the user. You need to focus what you're doing. You need to know why you're asking the question in the first place, and then you'll be able to get better answers. What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, about that. What you said, I think there's the questions that you're asking are sort of, to me, the baseline questions that you should have asked before you came here. Like you should know what they will think of this, because you've analyzed their workflow and have identified the gaps in that workflow, and therefore this concept that you are then presenting should patch some gap or fix some workflow that needs work. That's how I view it, at least when I look at concept testing. You could also think of it as an entirely new sector of a domain or something that you're looking at that you generally don't have any knowledge of. And if that's the case, then you shouldn't be bringing concepts in terms of, like, I don't know. It seems like prototypes is something that they mentioned, sketches, storyboards. Shouldn't be bringing any of that. It should be more general in nature to figure out if this is even something that you should move forward with the sketches or storyboards to begin with. And so to me, yes, it's more broad in nature when you're looking at a new sector. But if you have done sort of some preliminary research like that broad investigation, you should know what generally they will think of it. And so then you're more looking at, I don't know, like a usability test or something. And so the other point I'll make is that, yes, Barry, you mentioned that there's measurements involved. A lot of times you should bring some measurements. I think that is a good way to get some objective feedback, send it out to a lot of people, see, what people are thinking about in terms of where to go in sectors. I don't know. There's a bunch of different ways to go about it. And I unfortunately don't think that this is the right way. I think this is, you get at the workflow first before you start asking for feedback on concepts, because ideally it should patch that workflow. Any other closing thoughts? I feel like I was a little harsh there.
So yes and no. I mean, it is one of these things. It is tempting to go down the concept phase early and think that you need to get really deep into it. But as you say, if you should be presenting more than one concept. And particularly, I mean, I do this a lot if I'm in a new domain, if I'm uncomfortable, because I sometimes just going in and doing a discovery where you're, tell me about everything. You're generally going to do in my experience, I do a discovery phase, and then I'll come back with some concepts to, like I said, patch some holes. I know that the concept are going to patch some holes because I'm quite frankly good at what I do. But what I'm trying to look at is to say, right, these are the way I patch that hole, but how does that patch fit in the wider ecosystem? What other problems does that now throw up? And I use it as a tool for me to better understand the domain. So it's a tool. So I almost don't care about the concept. I know my concepts are good. They might not be appropriate, given this next step of conversation. So it's about being, I would, even though I sort of said, you can use measures if you want to get something more specific. I still wouldn't be using heavy measures at a concept phase, as such. I still use them as exploration, but
Yeah.
Anyway,
okay.
Enough of my ego.
Should we get to the big one? This one's a question that we get often, I would say, behind the scenes, but we don't necessarily answer it enough on the show, I feel. And so somebody has posted a TLDR on the user experience subreddit for UXPA salary insights. This is by WGX0. So again, this is looking at UXPA salary insights. They say, I thought I'd pull out some interesting details from the PDF so you don't have to. Really, there's no... let's just go through these one by one. Median salary of everybody, all respondents, $109,000. This is all US dollars. Maybe Barry can do the conversion. We will talk about UK numbers here in a second. Median salary for US only is $127,000. When you're looking at the median salary of UK, we're looking at 78,000 US and 64,000 pounds. When you are looking at entry-level roles, we're looking at about 75,000. When you're looking at mid-level roles, you're looking at about 128,000. Senior level roles, about 140,000. Bachelor's degree versus master's degree, in difference in median salary is about 5,000. Okay, that's a lot of numbers. Like I said, we'll have the link to this TLDR in the show notes, so you can go and check out the original post for the exact numbers. Hopefully, if you were listening, you kind of were picking up on where you fit in all that, and to see if where you're at. And I think this is really important to communicate, because if you know sort of what other people are getting paid, and you know sort of what your worth is, then you are more likely to request that at your next venture, or even at your current venture, to sort of help equalize that, especially for maybe folks who don't get paid as much as the white male dollar. We'll just say that. Barry, what are your thoughts on this? Is this fairly accurate from the UK perspective? Are you moving to the US anytime soon?
Well, if I could move out for just a salary, but come back to the UK for my healthcare and the things that we get that are quite nice, I could live with that. It's interesting because I've obviously, you said that I have no idea, the US, that's just like sort of like play money for me. It's dollar money. But the 64K for obviously median salary UK, it's interesting what averages you different types of average you use, because I've just done a quick search around average salaries, and it depends, I guess, to a certain extent, where does a human factors or ergonomist start and end? Because I pulled up one figure, for example, that the average human factors engineer and ergonomist salary in the UK is £85,000, or 85 and a quarter. And you're like, really? But the range, it says here, goes from 27,000 all the way to 156,000, which is fine. So that's one view. But then another view is actually the average salary for a human factors specialist is 44 or just under 45,000. So there's clearly lots of numbers to be bandied around. I think part of the problem with this in the UK is the number of human factors practitioners who class themselves as human factors factors practitioners is relatively small. We are a small pool of excellent people. Whereas you compare to other types of engineers and things like that, and the much bigger pools, but also where you might still consider yourself a human factors practitioner all the way through your career. So if you stay in that human factors domain and you go all the way up and stay within that technical craft, then you finish as a senior manager or whatever, and stay in that. But if you've been a human factors practitioner, what is quite common is for a lot of people to be human factors trained, but then skew off into another domain. So they're not necessarily doing human factors, they're employing human factors skills, but they've got a different title. So technically they're not human factors practitioners anymore, but they're just really good. They've transferred them skills really, really well, because they do transfer really well. So maybe that affects it as well. So I think pointing at I have a problem with median salary. I think where what is a really good figure is the entry level, mid level, and senior roles, because that gives you that they're useful numbers. So when you're going in and trying to pitch for a job, at least your expectation is reasonable. I've got no problem with people coming and saying, right, I want a job and I want 140k for, even though I've only just graduated. At least having these out there, you can try that. I'll say no, but at least you've given it a shot. And what the worst is, possibly worse, is you've got some really good skills and you come in and say, well, actually, I want a salary of 78k, but actually you're probably worth 140 or at that level. Getting it right. So we do need to talk about it more. The whole bottling down of salary, it's treated as a dirty discussion, and it shouldn't
taboo. Be. Yeah, I will say, the other piece of this puzzle that is sort of muddied, I would say, is that you have user researcher being 61% of the respondents, and then below that you have user experience designer at 45, which those numbers are already not adding up. So I don't know what is anyway. So they were selected multiple titles. Okay. User researcher, user experience designer, interaction designer. And so I think when you even look at the difference between research and design, there's quite a difference in some cases. Anyway, we should move on because we got one more thing. Barry, this needs no introduction. What is your one more thing this week?
So my one more thing is I was on holiday last week. We were on holiday last week. It was great. But a weird thing happened for me where I was on our first full day of camping. Normally, if I have a nap during the day, I can't sleep at night. It's like a law. If I fall asleep on the sofa, that's my nighttime ruined. I had on the Wednesday we went camping, woke up in the morning later than I usually do, which was fantastic. I then I was like, I'm feeling a bit tired. Midday, so about 11 o'clock in the morning, I then had an hour's sleep. Woke up for lunch. Then about 2 o'clock, fell back asleep again until 5. Woke up, had food, and I was like, oh, well, I'm clearly not going to sleep tonight because I'm not only napped once, I've napped twice. 9 o'clock, I was back in bed, asleep, slept through to the next day. I haven't had that since I was probably about 5 years old. It was amazing. I had a lot of sleep that day, and that evening, the next morning, I was buzzing. It was brilliant.
I wish I could have your energy.
Yeah.
Let's see. My one more thing this week. I got a PS5 a couple weeks back, which it's been out for a year and a half, and it's just been really difficult to find one. Finally found one, and it's cool, I guess. I don't know. I'm getting it for the exclusives. I think there's some other technology out there that's probably better than it, but I'm in the PlayStation ecosystem. It's fine. It's fine. You're not missing much, I guess, for those who don't have it yet. Anyway, I have a PS5. Add me. I don't know. Talk to me on Discord. And that's it for today, everyone. If you like this episode and enjoy some of the conversation, I guess, around AI that can chat with you, I guess there's a couple things you can do, right? There's the episode 249. Let's talk about Google sentient AI. And then there's also the one where we talked about putting robots into old people's homes. That was 251. Comment wherever you're listening with what you think of the story this week. For more in-depth discussion, you can always join us on our Discord community. Follow our official website, sign up for our newsletter, stay up to date with all the latest Human Factors news. If you like what you hear, you want to support the show, there's a couple things you can do. One, you can leave us a 5-star review. That's free for you to do. 2, you can tell your friends about us. That is also free for you to do. If you want to throw money at us, you consider supporting us on Patreon. That'll get you access to Human Factors Minute, which is something we put a lot of time and effort into. As always, links to all of our socials and our website are in the description of this episode. Mr. Barry Kirby, thank you for being on the show today. Where can our listeners go and find you if they want to talk to you about getting in touch with that digital Barry Kirby you brought up a couple months ago?
If you want to go and talk to Digital Barry, then you can find me on Twitter at Baz_K and across other social media. Or if you want to hear some of the interviews we've been up to that we mentioned at the top of the show, then find me at 1202 The Human Factors Podcast, which is at 1202podcast.com.
As for me, I've been your host, Nick Roome. You can find me on our Discord and across social media at Nick_Roome. Thanks again for tuning into Human Factors Cast. Until next time,
It
depends. And scene.
Oh.
Sounds like in.
Yeah, your audio's just gone weird again. That's just bizarre.
It sounds like
Don't know
wind
what it is.
on your end. I don't know.
Really?
Is it?
Oh. So you've got all that sort of up and downy stuff again. That's just bizarre. So what I was going to say was in the pre-show, I was like, I'm about to say something, but I'm not going to say it because it'll jinx it. I'll talk about it in the post-show. And I was going to say we'd gone through all of that pre-show with no audio problems whatsoever. Everything was spot on, except for you complained about mine. But then as soon as you hit go and we came in, it was all let, but it was buffering. And if you listen back to it, it's weird because it was starting all up and then you've gone like sort of twice speed. And then pausing, then twice speed, and then pausing.
I have a hypothesis on that. Am I okay now?
Yeah, you're fine now.
I have a hypothesis on this. And I'd be curious to try it out next time. Each time that happened today, it was on the 30-minute marker. And so
because you just like again now. Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if the 30-minute marker has some significance for like a recycle in the internet.
But why is that only happening to you and not to me?
Because I'm on 5G, and so there's a tower right over here.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Good shout.
So I'm wondering if the tower hiccups every hour on the 30-minute mark.
Could do. That would make it's an interesting hypothesis. We should try that.
We'll try it out because like you said, it was totally fine up until the moment we started, which was on the 30. And then right when we ended, which was on the 30, it happened again.
Yes, no, that's true. So could we offset our start by 15 minutes? Because that would do it, wouldn't it? Because that would mean that if it was to happen, it would happen 15 minutes in, not directly on start or end.
Oh, you're thinking 15 minutes earlier. I'm thinking 15 minutes later to help us prep more.
Oh yeah, no, that way would work. Yeah,
way it would happen right around the time that we do it came from. That'd be like the second it came from.
Yeah. So yeah, we could. I mean, it would be interesting to do the experiment and see what the outcome is.
Even 5 minutes, even if we just did,
yeah,
35.
it would take. Yeah. We could do that. We can be dynamic in that situation.
Yes.
That whole pay thing was interesting because again, I knocked up a quick search to see, and I didn't. For them to sort of suggest that the average human factor salary is £85,000, I was like, wow, I'm underpaying myself a lot. But that could be true. Maybe I just do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. This is it's median, but I'm looking at this and I find that the application to human factors isn't quite there because like sure, a lot of human factors practitioners go into UX. I think because of the lucrative nature.
Well, UX and everything associated with it now is trendy at the moment. It's fashionable.
Lucrative.
It is. It's the thing. My argument is it's still just part of human factors. It's because I see there's a slight. It's interesting because there's a UK US slight difference, a nuance here. That I think largely in the UK, human factors and ergonomics are synonymous. They're exactly the same thing. Whereas in the US, I think you treat human factors, so ergonomics is around the physical aspects of things more so than human factors, which you see slightly more systems and digital. It's not. I don't think that's a hard fast definition. I think that is a slight more nuance than we have.
Can I just say the like ergonomics in the US irritates the hell out of me. This is so, man, like, you're right, because you search for ergonomics and you get shit like office chairs and desks, and it's like that's part of it, I guess, but like they're saturating that tag or that search term with shit like that, and it drives me nuts.
Your ergonomic keyboard and your ergonomic mouse with your ergonomic press and your ergonomic pen and your super ergonomic some whatever it is. We are exploring the idea about I don't think it's possible, but making ergonomics or ergonomic a reserved word, so you can't use it unless you're actually qualified to use it.
Yeah, and so yes, we do kind of treat it that way, that ergonomics is fitting the user to a physical object or thing, but the mental workload side of it is the human factors aspect. And this is just me talking. This is from my experience. Then you also have the word neuroergonomics that gets thrown around there sometimes, which to me is equivalent to human factors. You are molding something to the mind of a user. And so if you use it that way, I guess, there's no difference to me. I think, I don't know. So you're saying there's no difference between the two. They're used interchangeably.
Largely, I think there's possibly a generational thing here where if you're slightly more old school, you're more chance you use ergonomics. If you're down with the kids, you might use, well, actually, if you're probably more middle-aged like I am, you're probably more into the human factors piece, because obviously the term human factors came from the States rather than UK born. And then if you're doing user interface design testing now, then that's where the UX element is. Largely, they're all in and around the same sort of field. So yeah, human factors and ergonomics is largely synonymous.
It's synonymous. Like, so here's, I think, this is my speculation as to why it's this way in the US, is because there's several agencies. There's OSHA, there's UNC, EHS, that, or sorry, it's just EHS, Environment, Health, and Safety. You have these entities that are government mandated, issued, regulated, that are focusing on things like a working environment. And I think the keyword environment there is why so many of it is separated out when you look at the search terms, because if you look at sort of, I mean, they use it interchangeably here at EHS, but really on OSHA, let's use OSHA as an example. They're talking about things like musculoskeletal disorders in the workplace. They're talking about, protecting workers in terms of safety, physically, workspace. And so all like hazards, environmental design. So that OSHA is breaking that up. On the same page, carpal tunnel, tendonitis, rotor cuff injuries.
Yep.
trigger finger, muscle strains, low back injuries. You're not really hurting the mind there. There's no protection of the mind, I should say. There's no, OSHA is meant, the standards that OSHA puts out are meant to protect the person physically. And I think when they use ergonomics, they are thinking of it physically. They are protecting the worker, but not designing the system to mold to the user's mind. And so that is why I think terms like neuroergonomics are catching on, because now you can justify, yes, these are ergonomics, but of the mind. And human factors itself, the term human factors has a branding problem. Like, it really does.
Well, but then it's so does human factor. Nobody truly knows what it means.
Right.
We spend so much time. I've spent more time at conferences in the bar trying to define
human factors.
Yeah, well, exactly. What is human factors? But it's also down to, because there's such a broad spectrum, and as you quite rightly say, there's that physical element. I've done less physical assessment, I think, than digital work and mental workload, that type of thing. But I find it fascinating because it is, very, are you going for like a 1-person, 2-person lift? Are you lifting within your right range and reach and all that sort of stuff? It is still all to do with the human, so it's a factor of the human. So therefore, I'm more than happy with that. But then you get people who will argue and said, "Oh well, I don't believe in that bit, but I do get strongly involved in this bit. Therefore, this is what it is." It's like, well, it's kind of all of it. That's where I get with the UX HF argument. I see UX, because it is just interface design, which we've been doing in HF for a very long time, but I think there's for me, and this is because we've gone off tangent slightly, but there's a directional issue. For me, that's why there's a difference between UX and HF. HF is generally a bottom-up type approach. It's very safe. It's built on really good heuristics and driven up to produce something that is very functional, will perform as needed. UX has kind of come at it from the other direction, where it's come to be sellable, popular, look good, give a good, warm, fuzzy feeling. Might not necessarily be the safest product in the world, but it's okay because we'll catch it on the next iteration. And I don't think I'm doing anybody a true injustice by saying that, because generally UX is for the general market. It's for your mobile phone app. It's for that type of stuff. If you want something to be safety critically good, you take a human factors approach, and really, you end up kind of the same place. One is just I draw out a vase model for this. One I see is top down, going from user acceptance. You delight. We use quite a lot of. You're delighting your user, whereas from an HF approach, you're satisfying the user. You're keeping them safe. You're taking a very well evidence mandated approach.
Would you argue that the consequences of use largely dictate the approach?
Yes. Most.
Okay.
Yes. No, I mean, even because I see, even before the whole thing became trendy, if you knew what your freedom of work was, or basically the freedom to experiment, the freedom to risk appetite, I guess is what I'm trying to get to. If your risk appetite is low, because of whatever the output, so you're wanting to be able to design a safe aircraft, then there's loads of guidelines in place. You follow the guidelines because that's the safe and right and auditable thing to do. If you're designing a cool app that's maybe a bit out there, you want to become a market leader, or you want to disrupt what's going on, and you've got quite a high risk appetite because the consequences are actually relatively low, certainly in physical safety wise, or mental safety wise, they're quite low. It might just be a business decision. Then I take a different approach. You've got more flexibility or breadth to try new things and look for something different, to look for something that's a bit unique, I think. What do you think?
I think human factors has a branding problem.
But what would you call it instead?
I don't know. It's like the only things that come close are like user-centered, user-centeredology, right? Like that's it.
So we went to an air show, so Farnborough Air Show, an international air show a couple weeks ago, and we saw a term that blew my mind in terms of, I hate it, but human centricity. And I was there going, and
Human centrist.
Yeah. So Amanda's like, we should. So we've been doing a lot of stuff actually specifically around this issue of how do we communicate what we do in terms of human factors and human-centered design, human-centered research to a domain that doesn't really do it on a day-by-day basis. So we work in defense and nuclear and safety critical systems. So actually, pretty much people know what human factors, or people think they know what human factors is. You know, it's all about safety and keeping people good and all that sort of stuff. Fine, okay, we
no one knows what human factors is.
No, but they think they know. But if you go into somewhere like retail, or you go into things where actually safety criticality doesn't really matter, then how do you describe what you do and what the value is? And so we've been coming up with some models and stuff about what we can put into our brochures and on our website and stuff. And so when we saw this, I've been thinking about how does one particular bit of it work, and then we saw this thing, human centricity, and Amanda was very much of the, oh, we should call it that, and I would go, we absolutely shouldn't. It's terrible. But it's thought provoking, because I'm sure at some point in maybe about 50 years we'll sit down and say we should call it this, and then we'll earn loads of money. It'll be great.
Yeah. So, I mean, like my issue with the branding of human factors comes down to, like, what do we call ourselves? Human factors practitioners. What the hell does that mean? If you look at, like, the way other people call themselves things, UX researcher. Okay, what is user experience? It's still kind of ambiguous, but at least you have user experience in there. Psychologists. Engineers. Cognitive psychologists, experimental psychologists, designers, industrial designers, interaction designers, graphic designers. You have sort of these. What I'm getting at is, you know what a psychologist is. You're dealing with the mind. Do you know what it is?
Really?
Well, you can break it down further. You can do, cognitive psych. You could do,
but like you said, you sort of turn around with psychology and say, well, you're dealing with the mind. Okay, well, that's true. But then there is a huge breadth to that. Like, no, there
is. But what I'm saying here is that people generally will know that, okay, psychologist, study of the mind, great, right? Whether that's help me figure out my mess of problems, every Saturday at 9 a.m., or if it's, scientific research that gives us insight into X, Y, and Z, that psychologists are doing something with the human mind. It's when you start adding on additional terms like industrial organizational psychology. Okay, well, what is that? That's, workplace. That's so you're specifying that that's the mind, right? Human factors is interesting because there's not one domain that solely fits into it. It is all these things. It's psychologists, it's engineers, it's designers.
I think that's the problem, is the fact that with psychologists, right, you feel you instinctively know what it's about. So it's a bit like, so when I used to be in the army, and I used to be an army officer, and my parents had a grip on what I did for a living. I was an army officer. They had no idea what it meant. What I did on a day-to-day basis, no idea. But it was something that in society that we could put a label on and say, we know what this means. Psychology is the same. There's so many different brands of psychologist, or engineer. There's so many different brands of engineer that you think you know what it means. I think the problem with human factors is it does exactly what it says on the tin. Is the fact we deal with everything that is a factor within people, within humans. So it is psychology, it is sociology, it is, behavioral and cultural thinking. It is physical attributes. It is, and because it's so broad and so ridiculously simple, i.e., it's everything, that we really struggle with it because you can't bound it. So then when I talk,
let me challenge that.
Go on then.
Let me challenge that because when somebody says I'm an ergonomist, you know what they do. Do you not?
Well, no, because I look at the physical side of things, I look at the mental side of things. I've got exactly the same problems with ergonomists as I have with human factors. It's not bound.
Oh man.
So you could fall into the stereotype of that, of saying if I'm an ergonomist, I sell pencils with little grips on them.
Yeah, I mean that's what people think, but at least they know that theoretically, the products that they're producing are centered around a human.
Or they're throwing in a buzzword they don't truly understand.
Yeah, that happens a lot. Yeah.
I got an ergonomic chair. No, you haven't. You got a chair with lots of levers and buttons on it. Doesn't make it ergonomic.
It's like human factors. It's just such a. Bleh. It's that's the term, bleh, right? Because I mean, you have things like health sciences. Okay, we know roughly what you're doing there. That's pretty ambiguous. There's a lot of things that fall into health science, but you still know at the high level what they're doing.
Yeah,
they're working with human health, right? I'm just saying, there's got to be something for human factors to where, like the next level up, literally is scientist, but not in all cases, and that's what makes it difficult. Is because like not everybody's a scientist in human factors. I mean, you could do like
I've interchanged between scientist and engineer on multiple jobs. In fact, sometimes on the same job, because again, it's encompassing. It's because you end up doing research and then apply it straight into an engineering role. Yeah, crazy, man.
Yeah.
See, really, again, I blame this on you Americans. Not to
it's our fault.
Yeah, no, we were all happy with our ergonomics, and then you guys invented this term, human factors, and then we felt like, oh, you've done that, then we better take that on as well. You just couldn't just leave it alone, could you?
No, we
want your own country, want your own branded human factors, and jeez.
Yeah. Oh, hey, my wall is breathing.
I was going to say that's an impressive wall. That.
Whoa, what is going on there?
That's. You've got new co-stars. Yeah,
I got a little. Yeah, what? You want it closed? Oh, here. Why don't you come here? You want to say hi?
Come and join the show.
I gotta tell you, Barry. He every time he sees the Restream interface, he says Barry.
Yay! Tell me that's his first word.
No, not his first word, but he knows that like I do a thing with a Barry every Thursday, and he one day where we were in the grocery store, he just kept saying Barry. So
well, you can't blame him for that, can you?
Whoa, that's cool. Yeah, do you want to show everybody? Look, show everybody your new monster truck.
That is a cool truck. I like the truck.
That's a very cool truck. Wow, what are you looking at? Oh, are you looking at the monitor? Yeah. Can you wave?
Can you fix it so it all doesn't break anymore?
Can you just wave? See that? Can you wave to that? Yeah, there we go.
You like that thing?
Yeah. Oh, is that a sticker? What is this? Is that a car sticker? Hey, can I ask you what you think of human factors? Can you come here and say human factors? Can you just say human factors? Say human factors. Say human factors. Okay, close enough.
I'll do.
Oh yeah, say it again. Human factors.
Human factors.
Human factors. There you go.
Oh, there's clips and jingles and everything just made right there.
Daddy's turn. Human factors. All right, baby's turn.
Human factors.
That was it. That was it. That was it right there. Yay! Look.
Where is it?
Woo.
That one.
Oh, thank you.
Daddy too?
Daddy's turn. Yeah, Daddy didn't lock his office before he started recording. So, oops.
It's all good though.
Yeah. Show's over. So this is the post show. Can you say post show? Yeah, post show. Got it.
You need to
You say
all of this afterwards.
I know. Say anything goes. Yep, anything goes. This is a
Excellent work.
monster truck review. Oh yeah. Do the wheels spin? Yeah. Look at those wheels spinning. That's cool.
It's the simple
Very
things
cool.
that entertain us. That's a good
It really
analogy.
is.
Of course. Oh, not to have a care in the world except the wheels of the monster.
I know. You gonna go put it down the slide? Here, go put it down the slide. You gotta climb under though. Yeah, climb under. Go put it on your slide. On your slide. I'll be out in a few. It's okay.
Cool.
That was a treat.
Co-hosting in no time.
I know. You can already say human factors.
And he probably understands it better than we do as well.
He probably understands it better than we do.
Oh, bless.
Is it? We don't even know what we do. We can't even define it. See, that's I think the branding problem. We can't even define what we do, and therefore other people don't understand what we do.
Exactly. And because it's so, I think partly we try and pull too much under one title. When
That could
in
be,
reality,
definitely.
in reality, this is where I think the UX thing does kind of work, because we've got so many different disciplines that we're a useful body to come together and share stuff. But actually, like I said, the amount I get involved generally in, say, physical design, physical measures, things like that, is not as often as when I get involved in system design, system development, systems engineering. So, yeah, I think that's where you have sort of difficulties. But
Yeah.
no.
I'll also just say health sciences kind of has the same. Hang on, can I show everybody? He got a car too. Let's show the car.
Oh, that's a cool car. I like that.
Yeah. Those Hot Wheels.
I'd say little Hot
Mattel,
Wheels
send us stuff.
are way better designed than what my car is.
Oh, your EV doesn't look like that?
My EV's not here yet.
Oh no.
My EV is still a painful. So it was supposed to be here 2 weeks ago, and then Ford, in their infinite wisdom, realized that they needed to put an update on all Ford, so basically put a stop on all deliveries because the cars kept on. What's the technical term for this? Blowing up. Yeah. So a battery contactor issue. So it's a software fix, so they've been doing that. But apparently, I had an email on Friday that says that it might arrive next week or the week after. So hopefully next 2 weeks.
Where they just roll it off the truck and like send it to your front door and say, "Here you go. Here's a car."
Well,
I've
never had a new car before. So every car I've always had has always been secondhand because I'm tight, and because of the work we're doing in the environment, and also because I think it is, looking at how we deal with transport differently. I think it's an opportunity to go and set an example. So we've done this, but I don't know how the whole new car thing works. It only dawned on me the other day that I'm going to have a brand new registration plate and everything.
Oh yeah,
it's going to be the whole thing. Nobody's ever going to. Well, seriously, apart from the test people, nobody's going to have driven this car before at length, and it's scary stuff. So I'm excited, but I'm sort of tempering my excitement because it's still not here.
Yeah. Well, it's about that time that we wrap up here. Thank you, everyone, for joining us live and sticking around. Really appreciate y'all sticking around here and watching us debate about what the hell is a human factor.
What do we
and
do?
what?
I said, what is it we actually do? Maybe
What do we do?
We'll solve that.
Maybe we'll continue this debate for years, for eons to come. Anyway, thank you all for sticking with us, and we'll be back next week for some fun stuff. We'll see. Oh yeah, shoot! We always do the preview of next week. Dang, and I didn't do it. Let's do a quick preview of next week. Okay, you ready? I picked the stories.
Go.
So we got 2 weeks of stories, and I picked the best from both weeks. And the stories that we could potentially talk about next week. Are you ready? Drum roll, please, while I bring this up somewhere. Here we go. Bringing it up. Technically done, but
Don't have a drum roll. Don't have.
yeah. Where's?
That'll do.
Oh. Cool. Let's see here. Hold on. I am attempting to find my.
Those make me laugh.
This is awful. I do not like the way that Patreon's redone their stuff. It's just awful. I can't find anything. Anyway, here's the stories. Are you ready?
Go. Yeah.
The first story we have for next week is going to be this awesome story. Actually, this is my favorite one. Designs for The Line, the city of the future. Have you seen this one?
No, not yet.
It is like it's like a 62-mile long skyscraper.
Cool. Okay.
The next story, towards a touchless airport journey.
Let's not do that.
No, you don't want that one? Think of all that entails.
That's true. Yeah, no, we could get ourselves lost in that quite nicely, I guess.
Yeah, here's another one, aviation related. Emerging hazards in commercial aviation.
Technology slant onto that, perhaps. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, and the last one. Some types of stress could be good for brain functioning.
Oh, interesting. Well, I'd quite like to research that one. That's quite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. That's
Cool.
it. Any stories you want to know, go vote on Twitter, or if you really want to vote, do it on Patreon. And we'll see y'all next week. Bye, everybody. Bye.